All right. We are back. Guys, I am excited. I'm probably gonna keep saying this, for the rest of 3 days. But I'm super excited to have uh, Tom Rasmussen here. Tom has probably probably a story that I've never heard before in somebody's journey. And so I had to bite my tongue, my lip, because I wanted to know more then. And I said, you know what? I'm gonna hold it. I'm gonna share it with everybody else. I'm not gonna be selfish in this moment because I had to say everything in me not to do so. But Tom, man, how you doing?
I'm doing good, man. How's it going? How's the day been?
It's been good, man. It's been good. We've had Ryan so far. Ryan, she was awesome. Derek had a last minute change. We're probably gonna try to bring in Derek later on today. But he had a last minute change and stuff in there. But man, we're here, man, with you, man. Tom, man. First of all, man, where you located at?
Right now, I'm living in Charlotte, North Carolina. Originally from Long Island, New York, though.
Nice. Man, I thought that was a Super Nintendo logo on your shirt.
On my shirt? No, it's actually
Yeah.
it's a Red Venture shirt.
Oh, okay. All right. Well,
It's just
there you go.
backwards.
Yeah. Tom is a engineer at Red Ventures. Real quick for the people, Tom, what is Red Ventures and what do you guys do over there?
So this is a hard question, actually. Red Ventures started off as a advertising company a long time ago, but now we're a very large, probably one of the largest tech companies on the East Coast, I would say. We partner with a lot of major brands and just kind of help them manage their web assets, help them come up with cool solutions. I work on a team that is for internal products. So what I do is actually we built a tool that kind of takes some of the lift off of front end developers and can put it more on to like business teams. So that way the developers are free to do more complex and intricate critical things as opposed to being able to swap out assets back and forth. But yeah, Red Ventures is a large company. We have offices all over the world, UK, Brazil, California, Florida. I think that's it for right now. But yeah, we're all over the place. New York City, we have an office now.
Nice. Okay. Tom, man, where you originally from? Are you originally from North Carolina?
No, my wife and I moved down here about 2 years ago now when I got the offer at Red Ventures. But I'm originally born and raised on Long Island, New York. My wife also. We actually, if any horror fans out there, I actually lived a mile away from the Amityville horror house. If you've ever seen Amityville horror,
I don't do scary movies. I don't do haunted houses. Call me what you want. I run and refuse to all of those things.
yeah. It's an old story, but yeah, it's an actual house. Based on a true story, and my wife and our apartment was pretty close by, so it was pretty cool.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'll take your word for it, Tom.
Hey, man, I'm not a horror fan either, but that's just like the easiest way to tell people where I lived.
Right, for sure. Okay, so Tom, man, so you have I gotta say, probably like a very, very, very interesting story. Tom, in high school, start off there. In high school, were you interested in, learning and stuff, how to code? Were you already doing a couple things like that when you're in high school?
So I feel like I'm going to keep surprising you throughout this because like what we've talked about, I've kind of been blowing your mind. I'm just going to keep changing that up on you.
I'm ready for it. Let's go.
So in high school, it was more of like a hobby. I really wanted to learn how to build video games. So it was mainly focused on like C++ and Java at the time. But that actually wasn't my main interest. When I was in high school, I actually was, you were able to do a vocational school at the high school I was at. So I was actually in vocational school for film and video. So that was my original career like choice, was doing that. And then I was going to do programming as a hobby. but yeah, it was mainly just like C++, a little bit of C Sharp, Unity script, like whatever I could do to build video games is how I got started in programming then.
So you're calling this a hobby, especially with C++, because that's a lower level programming language, which is definitely gonna be higher. I mean, it'd be harder than something like JavaScript. Why the interest? I mean, you mentioned games and stuff a little bit, but what sparked the interest there?
It really was just video games. I played a lot of video games growing up. Legend of Zelda is my all-time favorite game series. I actually have a Legend of Zelda tattoo.
I think we just became best friends. I think it's been official and stuff. Zelda. I haven't heard that forever.
Yeah. But yeah, I got into that. I got into World of Warcraft, and what really sparked it was, I would say, more of World of Warcraft, because you're able to write add-ons for the game, and that was written in Lua and XML. So I would learn that, and then I was like, okay, this is pretty cool, but I want to do more. And then it kind of got into more of building, like how to build like platformers and stuff like that using like C++, or I did Java for a while. But yeah, it was just, I wanted to be able to make games was my thing.
Gotcha. So what about college? What did you do? What did you study in college?
So I went so I never finished a full, I have an associate's degree. I don't have a bachelor's degree, but I went and yeah, I did film and video first. That was like my absolute first. Then I did, what did I do then? Then I did music theory for a semester. No idea where that came from. And then after that, I went into computer science, and I got, the rest of my college education was computer science.
Okay. So leaving college, you got your associates. Talk about career. What did that look like for you? What job and stuff did you go towards, after you left school?
Okay. So I actually went to college twice. I went when I was right out of high school. So like 19 to 20-ish time I was going. I was in kind of a dark place. So I wasn't really I was going to school, but I wasn't really doing anything else. It wasn't until I was, probably wasn't until I was about 23. I went back to school. It was after I met my wife. I decided to go back to school. But yeah, in 2012, early years, I wasn't really doing much with myself. I was working in retail. I worked in the metal shop with my dad for a year. I worked, at a liquor store part-time. I worked at Target part-time. All these kind of odd jobs for a while. I didn't fall into a programming career until I was 23. And then when I was, I think 26 was when I finally got into web and was really going with that. I was talking with my wife yesterday after our live, and I'm like, wow, it's actually been a really long time that I've been a programmer now, professionally. And I'm always yeah, it's only been it's been a solid 7 years that I've been a professional developer of some sort.
Okay. So watch this, Tom. You mentioned Target. If I'm not mistaken, that was the job before you made the transition, correct?
Yep, that was my last job. That was my last retail job before becoming a programmer.
And what did you do at Target?
I worked in the electronics department.
Nice.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, I spent my days selling Xboxes and stuff.
Nice. We always we need those people in the world for sure. Okay, so now you're working at Target. You say you're working part time at a liquor store as well. Are you still learning how to build games on the side?
I haven't in a while.
So throughout that process, were you learning anything on the side, doing any type of programming?
When I was at Target, I would mess around with it a little bit, but it wasn't something serious that I really did. I would mess around with HTML and stuff because I'm dating myself, but MySpace and everything was cool originally, when that was out. So I learned I learned a little bit of HTML and CSS from there.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a completely different, completely different way that those languages are set up now. But yeah, no, I really like when I was at Target, like I wasn't doing anything with programming.
Okay. So if Target being your last job,
Mm-hmm.
talk about your transition to your first programming job.
So one of my friends from high school sent me a message on Facebook. He's like, "Hey, uh, we have an opening for a programmer here. It's nothing fancy. It's nothing cool. You're not going to get paid much, but it's a solid 40 hours a week. And if you want, you can come in. I've already recommended you." So I went in for this interview. It was at a small letter shop.
So hold on, pause.
Yep.
Why did he recommend you? Go ahead.
Because we used to skate together, like skateboard, and we were just really good friends. We always talked like tech. I helped him out a lot. I helped him with his programming homework when he was in college and stuff like that. So
hold on, pause. Let me get this straight. You are a salesman at Target,
mm-hmm.
Selling TVs, electronics.
Yep.
You are helping a college student who's in a CS program with their homework as you're going through this process.
Yep.
Okay.
I've always loved programming. I just never, and like programming kind of came a little easy to me because I got started like super early, so it was just like very natural for me to do.
Mm-hmm.
So like understanding like the problem solving part was like super simple for me. And I think that's like, it wasn't really like language that he was having issue with. It was more of just like problem solving itself.
Okay. So real quick, before we kind of do kind of go further, from your perspective, what's the difference between learning syntax and problem solving?
Syntax is language specific.
Mm-hmm.
So like having an understanding of, and like these are computer science principles and things you can learn like in college, but you can also learn them on your own. Like being able to write reusable functions, understanding logic flows, understanding how for loops work, how arrays work, like just like knowing fundamentals is the same thing. Like as long as you can solve a problem without actually using code and use like pseudocode, like, I need to take this array, I need to remove this index, I need to reinsert it here. Like if you can talk that out in your head, you can solve it in any language as long as you learn the syntax. It doesn't matter. So your problem.
Explain pseudocode real quick.
So pseudocode is coding without coding. It's kind of a way of explaining to yourself how you would go about doing a problem. So like, a simple way of doing this is a button on, let's say like a button for CSS. Like, okay, well, when I hover over it, what do I want to do? And then you want it to do, okay, I want it to change color. I want the color to transition in, and I want a border to show around it. And that's pseudocode. Like you have each of the steps kind of like listed out in a way as how you would program it. It kind of doesn't give you exactly what you need, but it gives you a good outline.
Is it fair to say that pseudocode is a big piece of problem solving?
Oh yeah. Being able to chunk out anything into steps, like smaller steps, will definitely help you out. That's how we work on my team at Red Ventures. Like we'll come up and be like, okay, we want to add this feature into our software. How do we go about doing this? And we'll go, okay, well, the next step down would be we need to implement this. And then we take a look and then we go, okay, well, then how do we implement that part? And being able to like pseudocode is the same thing as like breaking something down as small as you can. So doing that's like insanely essential for problem solving.
Gotcha. Okay, so kind of getting back into the journey here.
Mm-hmm.
You went in for an interview. Your friend recommended you. You went in for an interview. And what happened from there?
So I got the job, like he told me that day that I had gotten the job. And this was at like a letter shop where they did like a mass mailing So actually for the first 2 weeks on my job, I actually worked in the warehouse to kind of understand like the whole process of everything. And then after that 2 weeks, I got my computer, which was this ancient Dell, like ancient Pentium 2 Dell that I was rocking for a solid amount of time. And then I spent the next 3 weeks learning this super archaic programming language that they were using. And then from there it was just kind of like, I wrote the scripting to, we were printing hundreds of thousands of records a day. And that's like what I did. It was pretty much like it would connect to a text file and it would iterate through names and addresses and generate postal codes and do all kinds of stuff. And then we just print that out and mail it. And that was my job.
So remind me, if you don't mind, how much money were you making at Target?
I was making like $925-ish, I think, like somewhere around there.
And it's your first computer programming job. How much money were you making there?
I was making $10 an hour.
All right. I'm gonna repeat both questions. How much were you making at Target?
Just over. I'll actually just say just over $9 probably.
So as a computer programmer, and I don't want please let's not get this let's not get this misunderstood. Getting paid $10 an hour is simply unheard of. Like I've never heard anybody be getting paid $10 an hour. So Tom, your entire programming here, how long are you in a position where you're making $10 an hour?
It was only a couple months. After a couple months, they bumped me up $2. So I was at 12, I think. But the big thing for me was I was programming. I was in retail anymore, which was like any retail job that I had was just absolutely taxing on my mental state. And if you followed me on Instagram before, like, I'm pretty open about, I've battled with depression and anxiety my entire life. And, working in retail was just destroying me slowly. So it was more of I don't care that I'm making only $10 an hour. It was, I need to get out of this area of work. And I got out and I was doing this for 40 hours a week. I had a steady paycheck. It gave me some stability, which is what I really needed.
Tom, you just mentioned something I think that's probably not talked about enough is mental health, especially as you're going through this journey. So talk about how are you able, because you're already, you just said you're already battling depression. How are you able to balance that when you're going through this journey? Because when you're going through this journey, it's like literally hurdle after hurdle after hurdle, roadblock after roadblock after roadblock, and you just continuously hit a wall as you're going through this journey. So how are you able to balance that?
So a lot of it is mainly, one thing is I do what I love. Like I love programming. I don't care what kind of programming it is for the most part. Like I just love programming. So doing that, it definitely helps with the mental load, but having hobbies is huge for me. Playing video games, skateboarding, I speed solve Rubik's cubes, like whatever you can do. I write, like anything you can do to kind of like relax your brain a little bit will definitely help. But also having like a solid support system. Like my family's always supported me. My friends have always supported me. My wife is amazing and she supports me. So yeah, like dealing, there are days where like I'll come home from work and like it'll just be a rough day and I'll just be down and just not want to do anything. And you're going to have those days. But it's important to realize like the big thing is like making sure you're not letting it get out of control. Because that's something that like is stigmatized in the tech industry is you need to work 60 hours a week, only code. That's all you do. and that's not healthy at all. Like I work, you know, I go to work for 8 hours a day when we're not in this crazy, you know, situation. Like I go to the gym. We have gyms on campus. I go and I take care of that. I go outside and I walk. I take breaks. You know, I take care of myself, which I think is probably one of the things that a lot of newcomers kind of underestimate. And the benefit of stepping away for 15 minutes is like insanely beneficial.
Actually, can you elaborate on that a little bit? You know, what are some things that, because I think you hit it on the head, because I was definitely one of those people when I first started. I was like literally going at all types of night. You know, wasn't eating healthy, if anything. Water intake, you know, so all of this like that. So somebody getting started, what are like maybe one or two or three things that they definitely should implement as a prepare to kind of like go along this journey?
So something that works for me is the Pomodoro technique. If you don't know what that is, it's you set a timer for 20 minutes and then you have a 5-minute break. So every time you have focused work for 20. So for 20 minutes, you are not being interrupted. You are focusing on a single task. And once that timer ticks, you get up, you stretch for 5 minutes, you go get water, you go to the bathroom, do what you have to do, come back and get back to work. And you just do that throughout the day. And then after every couple cycles, you get a 15-minute break or whatever. So that's something that's really helped me out. Stepping away when you're stuck is probably the hardest thing to get used to doing, but it is one of the biggest things you can do. I will preach that to the moon and back. If you get stuck, grinding through it is probably just going to make things worse. Get up, go walk outside. There's been times like when we were trying to launch our product last year at Red Ventures, you know, we were working really hard. We were in crunch time. We had to get this MVP out, and there were times that we got stuck on stuff, and I would just like go to my teammate and be like, "Hey, let's go for a walk real quick. Like we're stuck. We've been on this for an hour. Like let's go take a walk." And we go walk, and we wouldn't talk about work. We talk about, you know, our families and you know, video games coming up and stuff like that. And then as soon as we got back, we'd sit down, we'd knock it out in 10 minutes. So getting out and letting your brain kind of step back and step away is definitely the big thing. And also take breaks, like just in general, like study for 2 days and then take a day off. Your brain needs time to kind of absorb everything. And whenever you're learning something, you need to let your brain have time to kind of absorb the information. And it's like working out. Like if you work out, you have to give your body time to rest. Your brain works the same exact way.
You know, Tom, there's when I was going through my my 100 days code, and actually I think I was probably done with it. I was I was still documenting stuff. There's a video, I have to find it. There's a video. I was hit a roadblock and I could not figure it out, and I was on it for like 2 days. And finally, I was like, all right, whatever. I'm just going to step away from it. And something told me to record it because I knew within the first 5 to 10 minutes I was going to find a solution. And like I recorded it, and like I just threw everything, turned the lights off. Like I was so mad. It was like the smallest thing, but you know, me just trying to keep pressing. It was like I was just blind to it and stuff for like the longest. So I would definitely echo and stuff what you said for sure.
Yeah, I think that's probably like the hardest thing too, especially as like a beginner programmer. You're like, I got to do this. I'm not learning if I don't get this. But actually, it's just literally go to the kitchen and get some water. You'll probably come back with a better answer. It's just you have to step away for a minute and let your brain reset.
Okay. All right. So, real quick, how did what was your journey looking like getting to Red Ventures? To Red Ventures. What did that look like?
Okay, so there is actually a little bit of transition that happened after that first programming job. So the company I was working at actually got bought out by another marketing agent, like bought out by a larger marketing agency in Long Island. And after like, I would say 3 or 4 months, I made a transition from, working as the print programmer to actually a WordPress developer for them. And that was my first, that came with a slight raise, nothing crazy. I started developing WordPress sites, and in the meantime, like, this is when like WordPress really started picking up and web development really became more of a feasible future for me. I would be up late. Like, I would work my 9 to 5. I would come home, I'd make dinner for my wife and I. We'd watch some TV, and then she would go to bed because she had to be up for work early. And then I would stay up until 1 or 2 a.m. studying web development. Learning PHP, learning JavaScript, refreshing my memory on CSS and HTML. And then, I'd go to sleep and wake up and do the same thing over and over again. That eventually paid off. I got, into the WordPress there. Did WordPress for a number of months, I think almost a year. And then actually started building a React application that we were using to kind of like streamline some of the other employees' workflows. And so I built that. The company was like, okay, cool. Like, we want you on that full time. So they moved me into that position instead. And then after I was doing that, I got a message from Red Ventures on LinkedIn, and they were like, hey, we like your skill set. We'd love to talk to you if you're interested in any opportunities.
So you mentioned like web development. In your definition, what is web development? Because we got a couple people here who's like, they're day one. They're looking to get started. They might not understand what JavaScript is. They might not know what Python is. So from your definition, what's web development?
So web development is building of websites or applications that are used in the browser, or, well, yeah, actually just in the browser. There are two worlds. There is front end and back end. Front end is anything that a user would see. So like what you're looking at right now on this website, this is front end. Any data though, so usernames, any kind of information is usually stored on the back end, which is back end is usually languages like PHP, Python, Java. We use Go at my job. Node is extremely popular. I know Node. Node is great. Ruby is another back-end language. Front end is mainly JavaScript, HTML, and CSS. You can use TypeScript. TypeScript is just a superset. It compiles to JavaScript. And those are built with frameworks like React, Vue, Angular, Svelte, Backbone, Ember. Like, there's so many out there.
So how does somebody choose, John? I mean, Tom, how somebody choose? How do they choose if they want to get into web development? Maybe they're interested in mobile. Maybe they're, they met somebody who's doing it at the back end. How do somebody, kind of like lean into that decision?
I would just honestly try it out. That's what I did. I went ahead and just was like, okay, well, when I was kind of getting more serious about, what I wanted to go into in development, it was, I'm just going to try stuff out. Like, I was like, okay, cool. Like, I'm going to try out Ruby. I'm going to try out PHP. I'm going to try out Python. And backend really wasn't like what I wanted to do all the time. So I started trying out JavaScript. I tried out Angular 1. I tried out Vue. I tried out Angular 2 when that came out. And then I fell on React. And, I've been doing React forever now. It's really, programming is one of those things where you just go ahead. Like, it doesn't cost you anything to spend, 2-3 hours trying out a different language. Like, I've tried out, I don't know how many languages at this point. Like, I've tried Ruby. I tried Rust the other day because I was like, Rust seems cool. It's just go out and experiment.
Cool. So now here's something interesting, Tom. When you started learning, there was no YouTube. Well, not like the platform, but like, people teaching and stuff on YouTube. So
YouTube
on
was just
YouTube,
starting.
right? Stack Overflow.
Yeah.
I would say limited, if maybe very, very small amount of like online resources.
Yeah.
So you had to learn mostly through books, or if not all through books. Um,
Yeah.
we live in an age now where you can just like hop on YouTube, go to something like Free Code Camp, you can go to something like Udacity, so what are some of the same principles that someone can take, as you went learning through your journey of web development, you learn from books and everything. What are some of the same principles that somebody can take where they can implement now and today if they want to start their journey?
I think number one thing is read documentation. That is the single best way to learn something, in my opinion, when it comes to programming. Like for learning React has amazing documentation. Honestly, just read it. It reads really well, and it'll answer most of your questions through that. Join communities. Twitter is great. That I found for finding resources. Also, following people on Instagram. Most of us will answer questions if you shoot us a message that has context and everything. I have no problem with that. And really,
can I elaborate on that real quick?
Yeah.
Tom is definitely right. Most of us will respond on everything. But definitely, I would say when you do write somebody, definitely be direct. What you're looking for, precise and short and brief.
Yeah.
Please don't copy and paste your entire code. 30 lines of code into it and say like, hey, this isn't working.
30 lines of unformatted, unindented code.
So be precise. Ask us definitely. What we can help you with, and I can speak for Tom and me. We definitely will do what we can.
Yeah, definitely. And like when we had the React 100 Slack, that was great. That's how I met you. As I hopped in there, and people would ask questions, and if I had time, I'd try and do my best to help them get to their solution. But definitely just don't be afraid to ask questions. Just be polite about it. YouTube is kind of iffy for me when it comes to programming stuff. I feel a lot of people will watch YouTube tutorials and then not actually learn anything because they're just copying the tutorial. So like go ahead, learn the principle and then experiment with it and you usually find your answer. But yeah, don't do 1,000 tutorials. Do like one tutorial and then try and like do it your own way. Like recreate it without having any of the steps, how to in your old code. Come up with a solution on your own for doing it. I think would probably be probably the best way of doing it. That's how I still learn to this day is I'll read about something and be like, okay, cool. Let me see if I can do it. Like I'll read a Vue tutorial on something and be like, okay, cool. Let's see if I can do this in React, and try it out that way.
Pretty cool. What with your working at Rev Ventures, and we're going to open up for Q&A and stuff here. So feel free to drop in. Working at Rev Ventures, coming from starting at Target, and getting to a company like Rev Ventures, if somebody's looking to maybe take a similar path, you never know, man. Some people that work at Target now, they're right now, who knows? But somebody wants to take a similar path. What are the next steps? Like, what are the next steps that somebody can take to start their journey? Kind of, I guess put it in perspective. You're talking to Target Tom. You're talking to Target Tom. we'll say, but Target Tom has no experience. So
Okay.
what are the next steps that they can take when they want to start the transition into web development?
So anyone in web development, I would definitely say learn HTML and CSS first. Those are a must-have. And I would say basic JavaScript. You don't have to get super into it right away, but just have basic JavaScript understanding. Those would be the first 3 things I would tackle. And then once you can like build things using like Bootstrap or any of like the frameworks that are out there, like basic sites, I would start diving more into like you could learn WordPress, you can learn React, you can learn Node. But my main advice is learn the 3 basics, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and then just start building things. Like it doesn't matter, just build. There's a lot of times where like my wife and I will be talking about something and I'll just make it into a React app because I can. Just build things that you find fun. Like one of my favorite things that I ever built is like one of the simplest things in the world, but it's something that my wife and I look forward to every holiday season. We love watching the horrible Hallmark Christmas movies because they're so predictable. And I actually made a Hallmark movie bingo, and it's literally just a bingo card that's in a React app. And every time you load the page, you get a new version. That's it. It took me like an hour and a half to do.
Nice.
And it's one of my favorite things out there. Just build stuff and don't get discouraged. It's easier said than done, but when you're stuck or when you hit a wall, don't get totally discouraged. Like we're all there. Marlon's mentioned it before. Like there's days where, I'll rock out code no problem, 8 hours, like nailing every problem. And there's other days where I have to Google how do I, split a string? It's at a hyphen. Like what do I do for that? Like you'll forget stuff. There's too much to know. So beyond learning the 3 basics, this one's kind of hard to, I guess, understand is get good at learning. Like learn how to learn. That's something thankfully learning's always come easy for me. I can kind of pick up on things super quick. But yeah, learning, like practicing the ability to learn is probably going to be one of your greatest benefits in life.
Awesome. Okay, we're going to open up for Q&A. We got a couple questions and stuff here now. We got a question from Faisal. I'm really sorry for mispronouncing this. But his question is, how did you get visibility on your React app?
If you're talking about the one that I was building at the company in New York, it was a very small company. There was only like 40 people in this company, and it was just used it was like a team of like 10 people that were going to be using this tool. So, it was just like that. But for getting visibility on your React app, Reddit is great. Just GitHub, Instagram, any social media is going to be the best way to get visibility. One thing that I found would work pretty well is if you document the process on Instagram, that usually you'll get a bunch of eyes on that. People will get really interested in what you're building.
For sure. Next question is from Steven. Steven says, how important is it to know UX as a programmer?
If you're a front-end developer, very important. If you're back-end, not so much. So back-end is mainly just going to be writing data and APIs and stuff like that. But for front-end, I would say it's not like a necessary skill, but it's really good to just kind of understand like user experience and like what makes a good user experience versus what doesn't. You'll just kind of build that over time. Like I'm not a designer by any means, but like I I'll be using an app and be like, this is an absolutely terrible user experience or something like that. Like you'll get a feel for it over time.
For sure, definitely. See, next question is from Ivan. He says, "What backend do you guys most often use with React, and why?"
So personal projects, I use Node a lot just because I know JavaScript really well. It's easy enough to spin up a Node server. For backend, it really doesn't matter. React doesn't care. React is just a presentational layer. It's not really like, a deep integration or whatever. So like we use Go at my job as our backend. But I've used Node. I've used a Jamstack where I am, calling functions from other servers that exist. Doesn't really matter. It's whatever you're comfortable with, honestly.
Cool. Tom, are you familiar with any machine learning at all?
I'm reading that question. So I don't know too much. I just know TensorFlow is pretty big. But I know Python is like the leading language for machine learning. That's what I think our team uses at Red Ventures, because we do have an entire data science team here. I'm pretty sure they use like Python and Hadoop and all that stuff.
Okay, cool. And Mindy also too. We'll have tomorrow. We'll have X, and she's gonna be talking about machine learning and AI. Next question is from Rizio. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. He says, having issues with JavaScript and coding challenges, also networking to find jobs during COVID-19. Or you have any advice?
Don't give up. I mean, that's going to be the biggest thing right now. We are in a crazy time, but there are companies hiring. Red Ventures is hiring. Plug. Companies are still hiring. Like we're in a very grateful spot. We're in a very, we should all be very thankful for the industries we are in. I know I am. I get to work from home. I have a stable job. My income has not changed. I haven't really been affected as greatly as others. But companies are still hiring. The only thing that is different right now is that there is a lot more people because there were a lot of companies that closed due to it. Reach out to recruiters. Recruiters aren't bad people. They are just trying to make a job, though. So you got to find a good recruiter. If you can find a good recruiter, they can probably land you in a good spot. But just don't give up is the main thing. Keep trying. It's going to be a grind, but and that goes for your coding challenges too. Just don't give up. And like I said before, if you're stuck, step away, work on something else even. Go try a different challenge or whatever. And yeah.
I would echo that too, and Riccio, and say to from what he said earlier, to start to document your journey on social media, because that will start to kind of get people's attention too as well. And if you're explaining what you're doing, what you're building, what you're working on, you'll start to have some people who want to help, maybe with a particular project, and even people who kind of want to give you advice. But I would echo that as well. Next question is from Juan. He says, what is the best way to approach learning React?
I'm going to say this again. Read the documentation. No, but for real, just read through the React documentation. It's great. They'll walk you through setting it up. Create React app is a great tool that'll get you just into React itself without having to worry about things like setting up Babel or WebSocket or Webpack or any of your testing libraries. Create React app will just get you up and going.
The React documentation is really good. It's really well written, easy to navigate. Probably the best one I've experienced personally.
And it's a progressive web app, so you can save it on your phone's home screen.
Awesome. Dara, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing this. Said, I'm interested in becoming a front-end developer. Are there any specific UX courses, tutorials that you may recommend?
So I've never taken a UX course. Um, a lot of my user experience knowledge is just from like using sites or just building things. Um, a good way to do it is build something and then share it to someone else and be like, what do you think of this? Like critically. Um, they'll usually tell you like, if something's too abrupt or something's taking too long. So it's UX is kind of like there's good courses. I think someone actually linked one. I know Team Treehouse has them. There's other ones online, but I've never personally taken one, so I don't have any recommendations for you.
Okay. Next question is Ayub. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. If you're interested in a career as a freelance web developer, where to start?
Build stuff. Make up companies and build web pages for them. That's the best thing to do. Find companies locally that need a website and, build like 2 or 3 websites and just be like, hey, I'll give you this website if you write me a positive review, and like gather it up and build up a portfolio. And then once you get that portfolio, then you start reaching out to other companies and other communities, and you can pull in freelance work that way.
Sweet. Next course is a question, Brandon. So there's a bunch of build once, deploy everywhere methodologies across web and mobile clients. What's your outlook on developing as little code as possible to keep your apps across web, iOS, and Android?
So I've just been keeping an eye on React Native, because React Native, you are writing a React app. There's nothing really crazy about it. It's, you have to deal with the, platform specific modules every once in a while, but the difference between it is still different. You can't like copy your web React project and paste it into React Native and it'll work. But it is getting a lot better. And eventually there will be a time where I think that React Native and React will pretty much be the same thing, and you have to change like a couple small things. But I think the future is bright for it. I know some people don't like the kind of web app approach for building applications. They prefer native. And that makes sense if you have an application that needs that specific performance. But I think a lot of people overblow the fact, like blow it way out of proportion of how much of a hit that developing non-native applications like actually shows. Like I've never had any issues with, running a React Native app on a modern phone. So.
Okay, awesome. Next question is from Leroy. It says, any challenges working remotely versus brick and mortar?
Yeah, I'm used to working in an office, so it's definitely been an adjustment. It's been okay. My biggest thing is I don't have my team next to me anymore, which is kind of annoying. Because usually we'd be working on something, and if one of us got stuck, we literally just turn to the other person and be like, "Hey, you got a minute?" And we do that. I mean, now we can do that with Zoom and everything like that. But yeah, I just miss like having. For me, it's really like the whole COVID situation of like the gym being closed, everything being closed has kind of put a damper on like my routine's broken and stuff like that. So for me, it's a bit of a challenge. There's days where I just can't focus like at all working remotely. But it takes a certain kind of person to work remotely. I know I'm not like I could never do a full-time remote gig like for a long time. I can't. I know I can't. So I prefer to work in an office.
Sure. Next question is from Elena. She says, regarding reading documentation, how did you adjust? What did you do to adjust the technical terminology and documentation? I find some documentation challenging to understand and end up Googling for easier understanding / reading. Great question.
That's a good question, and you actually answered it. You should just Google it. What I would have to do when I was like originally learning was I had a highlighter, and if I didn't know what something meant, I would highlight it and write it down somewhere and then look it up at a different time in a different place. So yeah, some documentation is going to be extremely technical, but that's just what you got to do. You just got to look it up. You know, if you don't know something, like, so we're in an age where there's no excuse not to learn something. You know, you have all the information. You don't even need to type. You can literally just ask your computer, like, look this up for me. It'll do it. So if you have a question, just, you know, look it up. It'll give you a better understanding.
Okay, cool. And so we're gonna go final question. It says, any tips on availing skills in that space as far as front-end analytics? Any tips on availing skills in that space and personal preference for tools to measure site performance and do experimentation or A/B testing, things like Optimizely, Amplitude, Firebase, Segment, Flurry, etc.
So I haven't really done too much in analytics. The only thing I do is performance testing. And the Chrome's built-in Lighthouse tool is amazing for that. That's how I audit anything I build. We do that, but yeah, I've never used like any kind of front-end analytics stuff like that.
Okay, cool. Well, Tom, man, I definitely appreciate you joining us to talk about, you know, your journey from $10 an hour as a programmer to, you know, get into Red Ventures. You know, man, I think it's a definitely unique journey, and I think your experience and, you know, where you come from has given all of us a lot to think about and add value into, you know, our journeys. Like, you know, like, let us know that, you know, it's all a process and stuff as well. You know, so definitely, man, definitely appreciate you taking the time to chat with us.
Yeah, dude, definitely. Thanks for reaching out to me as soon as you created this thing. This has been fun.
Yeah, this is really came together. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. All right. So again, I'm going to put Tom's speaker card up. You can scan it if you have an iPhone. You know, it has Tom's email in there where you can find him, social media, reach out to him if you have any follow-up questions. And so I'm gonna add that. We're gonna take a few minutes. We're gonna come back to my man Ben Potter. He's gonna talk about the importance of building projects. This one's a very exciting one as well. All right, Tom, appreciate it.
All right, thanks, guys. Have a good day, everyone.